Welcome, everyone, to the Docomomo annual meeting and debut screening of Modernism in My Neighborhood. Since we have some non-members with us tonight, I would like to extend an additional welcome and talk a little bit about Docomomo before we officially start our meeting and just give you a glimpse into the workings and products of our local work. Docomomo stands for the documentation and conservation of buildings, sites, and neighborhoods of the modern movement. It is a national and international organization that promotes the study, interpretation, and protection of modern architecture, landscape, and urban design. My name is Craig Brandt, and I am this year's chair for our local chapter, Docomomo US Chicago. We're dedicated to increasing public awareness and appreciation and protection of modern architecture, landscapes, and neighborhoods, and sites in Chicago, Illinois, and surrounding areas. Our chapter partners with local and regional organizations, universities, and governmental preservation entities to advance its mission. Like our cities and cultural networks, Docomomo is a melting pot comprised of historians, architects, designers, preservation architects, conservators, museum professionals, contractors, and other enthusiasts from the modern movement. Gunny Harbo and others started the Chicagoland chapter in 2007. It faded a little bit and was resurrected in 2017, and the current board of directors was formed. We currently have around 90 members. Before we recap the year, our first order of business tonight is to celebrate the ritual of transition as we proceed with our board elections. I would like to call our chapter's annual meeting to order. We have 15 board positions slated in our bylaws. We are currently a board of 14 members, with board members typically serving on 2-year terms, which are staggered. This year, we will be voting on the nomination of both incumbent, renewal, and new board members, who you can see listed on the right side of the slide. This year's slate was approved by a majority of our 5-person nominating committee. And given the fortunate stability of our current board, the nomination committee was comprised of 3 of our board officers, 1 national board member, and 1 non-officer board member. The actual positions of the board members are at the discretion of the board itself and will be determined in our next chapter meeting in December. We have 4 new board members, and I would like to introduce them to you. Marcy Dinius, Beth Jacob, Ukarsha Laharia, and Max Posen. We have existing board members renewing their term. Thank you for sticking it out 2 more years. And finally, board members whose 2-year terms were renewed last year and have 1 more year left in their term. Without further ado, we'll proceed with our Zoom voting poll momentarily. Can I have a motion to pass the slate of board members for 2-year terms as listed?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please fill out the questionnaire in front of you. All right, we have 14 out of 14 yes and 0 no. Motion passed. Thank you again, board members, for your service, and welcome new board members. While we are on the topic of the board, our board members do heavy lifting guiding our chapter's activities. We have a program committee that meets monthly. We have an advocacy task force that meets quarterly. We have a communications task force that's in need of more members. We have a membership committee and a sponsorship committee. Although these committees are mostly or wholly composed of board members, there is no need for that to be the case. For anyone wanting to be a part of a committee, please speak to us or send an email to info@docomomo-chicago.org, and we will spotlight a couple of those positions. Speaking of committees and volunteership, our program committee is the most active of our committees, and I'm pleased to introduce you to Patrick Steffes, board member and a member of our program committee. Not only does Patrick help steer the course forward in the programs, but has given programs in Ogden Plaza and Peterson Park. So without further ado, take it away, Patrick.
Thank you, Craig. I appreciate it. We're going to just do a quick run through of all the activities that we did in from fall of 2024 through fall of 2025. Very busy, busier than I remember. I believe I was at most, if not all, of these events, and putting together the summary was a help. Going through it was a lot of fun. So, next slide, please. So we started off last year. Many of you were there. September of 2024, we were at the Loop Synagogue, which is right there on Clark Street, right across from the old First Chicago National Bank. Really interesting. Got to talk to members there. Go to the next door roof. Kind of see all parts of the building, which unfortunately is somewhat, I wouldn't say imminently endangered, but is faced with a lot of religious buildings, faced with declining membership and a lot of stress on in terms of upkeep and maintenance. Next slide. Next, we did this was something a former board member, um, Maren Sullivan, was the curator for a really exciting exhibit at the DePaul Art Museum on the life and career of Edgar Miller called Edgar Miller Anti-Modern. That was at I believe it was at the Art Museum through January. We were there in September of 2024. She led us on a tour, really interesting. About 20 of us were there, really found some amazing examples of his work and his incredible contribution to arts and architecture and the allied arts in Chicago. Next slide, please. Next, one of our board members, Elizabeth Blasius, gave us a really interesting online program on Baxter Travenol, which was a 1975 beginning in campus for Baxter Pharmaceuticals by Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. Truly a remarkable campus structure. Also endangered in the last couple of years. There was an effort to sell it, to demolish it, and turn it into a logistics center. That was opposed by the neighbors, and Baxter has since said that they intend to stay. I don't know how that works. This is a great slide. If you've ever been by here, you can see it on the northwest, on the tri-state tollways. You're going north out of Chicago. This entire room is held up by two columns, which you can kind of barely see behind that plant. Those walls are non-structural. It's just walls of glass. It's truly a remarkable building. Kind of set the stage for the north building at McCormick Place. This is something that Skidmore didn't really seem to do a whole lot of, but I understand this is the first time in one of their buildings they use this very unique form of construction. Next slide, please. Then, excuse me, in February, we did a really exciting program. About 23 of us went to the Fisher Studios by Andrew Rabori with a lot of decoration by Edgar Miller. We got to see a couple of different units, talk to some unit owners, learn about the unique sort of maintenance and upkeep that you have with these apartments, and just really, really exciting behind the scenes, just to get to go and see these, from the inside, as it were, and some real experts talking about the life and career of both of those terrific talents. Next slide. Here's some more pictures that you can see. If you drive up State Street, you can only see the front, but being able to see it from the courtyard is really exciting. And I can tell you, if you weren't able to join us on the tour, immediately to the north of Fisher Studios is a parking garage that you can just walk into. If you walk to the top floor, you're literally looking down on the buildings, looking from the north towards the south, but a really kind of cool view. So again, if you weren't able to join us, I would definitely recommend doing that. Something I kind of discovered by mistake with a photographer friend of mine, and it's really fun. Next slide, please. Here's some more pictures of the interior. You can see that curve theme excuse me, follows throughout the building. We learned about the glass block, and the glass block is structural in the sense that it holds up the glass blocks above it. So they're saying every year about 10 of them break on the bottom, the bottom levels, because there's so much weight above them, which I thought was very curious, and that's got to be a really unique sort of maintenance. Next slide, please. And then we did also with Myron Sullivan, who always spearheads for us every year, the Modernism Madness. We had 99 people engaged with us, where we go through on Instagram on our account various Different categories of what's the best modernist building. Had a little bit of downturn from previous years, so we're hoping to kind of hopefully kind of revive this again. It's a really fun thing that really helps to engage the community and hopefully grow our presence in the community. Next slide, please. And then we did a drop-in social at a restaurant called Chef Special in conjunction with the Chicago chapter of the American Institute of Architects. A lot of fun. We love these sort of drop-in, no charge spring socials or socials in general. I'm sure we're going to be planning to do another one in 2026. It's a great way for us to engage in a fun way and with other members and people who are fans of modernism. Next slide, please. Then one of the highlights for me for the year was our summer social in August at the Rockwell House, which is, I believe, Olympia Fields. Just a truly spectacular kind of a one of those houses that was sort of built in the spirit of Philip Johnson's Glass House and Mies van der Rohe's Edith Farnsworth House, but this is a similar but different. There is a lower level to the house. It's two-story, which you can't see in this picture because it's sort of on a very dramatic sloped site. It's held up with not with steel, but with concrete, which is sort of an aggregate, which is interesting. Very well, just wonderful stewards of the house who are really investing a lot in its maintenance and upkeep and restoration. Just truly a remarkable, really just jaw-droppingly beautiful house. Next slide, please. You've got some pictures here. Imagine having breakfast at this dining room table every day. You've got this dramatic ravine there, as you can see, how the lower level of the house is sort of built into the hillside with all that sort of concrete aggregate there. And the steps. There's a really beautiful yard with some kind of old growth forest, a beautiful part of southern Cook County. Next slide, please. Then we did another really fun trip just in October last month. We did Chicagoland Houses of Worship. This was a virtual lecture. Several of the board members participated, and we talked about different modernist houses of worship. That was the theme for Docomomo's national chapter this year. And this was a virtual production with 41 participants, a lot of fun. Again, highlighting the national theme. Next slide, please. That was the part one of the tour day, and this is the virtual lecture again. Next slide, please. And we followed that up with part two of the tour day, 2025, again on the theme of houses of worship, called Sacred Spaces and Displays, which I wasn't familiar with really any of these. It was a really wonderful example of different houses of worship and religious structures in displays. One, a church by Charles Stade, which has really helped their congregation for many years. And then we had this really remarkable. This is a sort of a. It's called a what? It was for nuns, but it's called a monastery, which I didn't quite get my head around. But it's sort of a cloistered group of nuns who all live here, and they were gracious enough to open up the sort of. They're not public at all. It's just very rare to be able to get in here. But the sort of transitional spaces where family members can visit them. One of them was this just truly remarkable chapel here. Next slide, please. You can see on the left is a church that where we started, and on the right is this. Let's see, that's a mausoleum, I think, right? Is that the no? Is that the Craig? Do you remember what that one was?
On the right,
Yeah.
that's yeah, that's the monastery.
Oh, that's the monastery. Okay, that's the entrance to the monastery. For some reason, it looks shorter. It's a full 2 stories. The perspective is a little weird. But yeah, just really beautiful and beautiful stained glass windows. Next slide, please. And then just last week, we had two events with the national chapter. We had a kind of a reception at Wrightwood 659, and then we had the Modernism in America Awards held at Design Within Reach on Fulton Market. So a number of board members were volunteering for that event. Really great event. That was Donna Primus. Previous slide was her presenting an award. She was on the nominating committee. So very, really exciting event there. Next slide, please.
Oops.
And then just so you all know, many of you do know, some of you may not. We have annual events every year. Modernism Madness, which is our Instagram sort of polling event. We do a spring fling, which is generally is a no charge, event at a local bar, say. Summer socials generally in August or September, and then tour day once the national chapter lets us know what tour day is. We schedule programs in conjunction with that. And we've got, next slide, please. We've got a couple of other exciting events coming up. In January, we're still looking at the final date. We are going to have a curator-led gallery tour at the Art Institute of Chicago's Bruce Goff Material Worlds Show, which is, I believe, the first Bruce Goff major exhibition in about 30 years. Bruce Goff's archives are housed at the Art Institute, so they've got a unique access to a lot of these materials. I've gone through, not the entire archive, but a lot of the archive in relation to a book that I worked on several years ago. So please stay tuned for that. And next slide. We are also going to be having a return visit to Crow Island School. Some of you may know that the original architects were Elil Saarinen with Perkins and Will. Perkins and Will revisited the school, and I believe it was just finished in this, I forget when it finished in the last couple of years, a new gymnasium on the campus. You can see it in the background there. So it's a very kind of rare, it's been added onto before, but everything that I can see is it was a very sensitive addition. They'd made some sort of minor changes to the functions of the building as well. So something we were there a couple of years ago. I personally wasn't able to go to that one, so I'm looking forward to being able to revisit one of the most, important modernist, certainly civic landmarks in the country. And I believe that is it. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Craig.
Thank you, Patrick. Every year we have on the board a travel grant that provides financial support for students or emerging professionals committed to the documentation and conservation of modern buildings. The intent of the scholarship is to enable one individual to participate in one of these national symposiums. The travel grant for 2025 was $2,000. It was granted to one of our younger board members, Max Chavez. Max is here today, taking a break from his book writing to tell us about the conference. Max.
Thank you, Craig. Nice plug. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I earlier this year it was a very cold week in Boston. I had the pleasure of attending the Preserving the Recent Past #4 conference. It's wonderful. As Craig mentioned, it's a sort of a huge partnership, mostly led by the Historic Preservation Education Foundation, with Docomomo US sort of leading a major charge in that. But the National Park Service also played a decent hand in that up until I think right up until right before the conference started, when a lot of the National Park Service cuts started happening, which they were very vocal about at the conference, which I found really admirable. So early into the administration. So, that did sort of cast a shadow over a lot of what we did, and I think motivated people even more. But I think that there was a lot of really great takeaways. I guess here's just a few photos, one from inside of the legendary Boston City Hall, where sort of the opening event and keynote speech took place at the beginning of the conference. Um, there was a lot of really great work there, and I think a couple takeaways that we could note just in our own work. In terms of what, this is preserving the recent past, and they took it, I think, to a really interesting, different level. Not only were they talking about, a lot of the speeches or a lot of the talks that were being held were not just about preserving recent past in terms of architecture, but also identity heritage. There was a lot of, talks given about how to commemorate or honor, or even landmark or preserve, in different fashions, histories that had to do with recent, civil rights movements, queer rights movements, things like that. So I thought it was interesting that, sort of to give us an extra perspective that sometimes the things that we do are not always architectural. They can be cultural, or they can be sort of identity based. Um, there was also a really good amount of work about context statements, which I think could be something for us to consider in the future in terms of education or advocacy. Context statements are really helpful reports that are prepared usually at city or state levels. And they kind of do exactly what they say. They help contextualize certain types of either architectural movements or building types, which give, usually at a state level, sometimes a city level as well, a framework with which to analyze those buildings and maybe get them on the National Register or make them a city landmark, things like that. So there was a lot of really great ones. I remember two in particular. There was one about roller rinks, which I thought was really wonderful, and how they did serve a particular cultural and social value, especially when they got popular in the 1970s. And another context that was really wonderful about late modernism and postmodernism in San Francisco, but how that could be applied to a national, a sort of larger national context. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there for us to maybe look into possibly advocating for putting a context statement out there for the city of Chicago, particularly, but maybe even for Illinois. I know that compared to other states, Illinois does not use as many context statements. So maybe there's something there that's missing that we could look into and possibly advocate for more recent architecture in that way. But overall, it was a really wonderful event. Lots of great talks, great people met. There was also a really spectacular mix of tours that were given as part of the conference. So here are just two IMPay designs that we got to see while we were there. But I mean, it was very impressive the amount of spaces they were able to get us into, which I think encourages or should encourage us rather to consider the kind of connections that we have to historic sites here and maybe strengthen those even more, because there's a lot of resources here that I'm sure that we would love to be able to hold tours in the future. Because people would really like to attend those things, and I'm sure that we would also like to get into them ourselves. So, yeah, just really great encouragement to continue building the networks and the relationships that we have with other organizations here in Chicago. But overall, it was a really wonderful conference. I was happy to have gone.
Great. Thank you, Max. Thank you for attending the conference and reporting back these things we can talk about further.
Mhm.
Just so everyone knows, the next national conference will be the ninth, will actually be the same conference as the ninth International Docomomo Conference, and that'll be in LA in March. Um, Next, I'm pleased to introduce you to Junko Taguchi, if you don't know her already. She's an assistant professor at Meijo University Faculty of Urban Science, and she just woke up in Nagoya, Japan, and she is going to, I am going to stop sharing my screen because Junko is going to give her own presentation to show us what she's been doing, what she was able to do in Chicago with her time here in collaboration with IIT and Docomomo.
Thank you, Craig. I'm very glad to participate in this Docomomo annual meeting. So I'm sharing my screen. Do you see my presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So, good evening, everyone. I'm talking from Japan, so it's good morning for me. I'm Junko. I was a visiting scholar at College of Architecture, Illinois Institute of Technology, IIT, from August 2023 to July 2025. And I'm a member of Docomomo Japan and Docomomo International. And at Docomomo International, I'm also a committee of education and training team. So I enjoyed participating in Docomomo Chicago's activity, for example, summer international social events or some tours. So I'm very grateful for the member and board of Docomomo Chicago because my my visit to Chicago was very fruitful and enjoyable for me in the past 2 years. So as I told you, I'm a member of education and training committee. Uh, in Docomomo International, we published a new statement called Tokyo Valencia document in 2022. It is especially for promoting educational strategy in Docomomo International. So it contains 8 articles, like education for modern movement heritage should aim to document, conserve, and reuse heritage that embodies the principles of the modern movement, and so on. And especially, please have a look at the ACE article. So we promote the advancement of the participation of heritage communities and the public. And I believe the younger generation, like children and youth in pre-university stage, should be involved in Docomomo's activities to know about their surrounding environment and what is modern environment and what we should do to maintain and reuse that kind of environment. So according to the publication of this Tokyo Valencia document, I visited Chicago to make a case study to realize that ideas of the Tokyo Valencia document. And I'm grateful for the collaboration of local schools, especially Chicago Public Schools, Dewey School of Excellence. It's the middle school. And Doolittle Elementary, it's located on Bronzeville. It's also a middle school. And ACE Amandra Charter School, it's specialized for architecture, conservation, and engineering. They are the high school. And in collaboration with IIT College of Architecture, Chicago Public School, and Docomomo Chicago and Chicago Architecture Center, we launched the program to teach and think together about modern built environment surrounding Chicago's south side, especially focusing on the story of the construction and expansion of IIT Modern Campus and the loss of the built environment that has long been a center of African American vibrant culture. So children and high school and middle school students learn about the history of IIT and Bronzeville and Chicago South Side and think about its lessons and implications. And they proposed about what they need for their surrounding environment on the south side of Chicago. So high school students proposed, this is an example, they presented that they need more safe space, more silent space, or they need the learning and enjoyable space for themselves. So it reflects their needs and their hope that there should be more inclusive spaces that they can use and enjoy. So they, supported by architecture and construction teachers, they used 3D CAD software online and make the presentation. And they presented their works at IIT, the main library of the Gaubin Library. So I'm very honored to see their presentation at IIT's library. This is another presentation from 6th to 8th graders. So some of them are living in Bronzeville, so they thought about if their surrounding environments named Lawless Gardens disappeared, and they designed their ideal development that is inclusive and enjoyable for them. And this kind of presentation reflected their learning from IIT and Southside histories. So and moreover, some middle school students presented that they wanted to create more helpful spaces for communities, such as child care center or homeless shelters. So that also reflected their how how they see their surrounding environment and how they see social challenges surrounding them. And also, IIT graduate students supported this program a lot, and they were learning about the history of modern architecture in Japan, especially in post-war modern. So we had a collaborative exhibition called "What is Modern Architecture to Me?" in the main library at IIT. So not only high school or middle school students, but also graduate students presented their works and studies and show their studies to younger generations to stimulate their curiosity and interest in architecture. So this is the uh, last slide. So this program is still progressing without me in Chicago. So based on the 2023 to 24 and 25 academic year implementations, Mr. Michael Dixon, fifth to eighth grade science teacher at Dewey School of Excellence, is still teaching this program in the 2025 to 26 school year. And we have some presentations and publications at Docomomo US Conference Miami in 2024, and we plan to publish this presentation and present it in LA in 2026. So I will be joining in LA conference next year, and we plan to publish this article somewhere soon. And we also plan to create a website because we have some videos about interviews and activities in this program. And I'm thankful to the participation of Docomomo Chicago's chair, Craig. We had an interview with some specialists about modern built environment and its educators. So it has Craig's interview and it has Adam Rubin's interview from Chicago Architecture Center. So I have to negotiate some credit, but we would like to create some website to present this work online. So this is my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Junko. Yeah, it was quite an amazing project, and I was really impressed with how much knowledge and involvement you were able to give such a wide range of ages of students. So we'll be looking forward to seeing more of the results. And if anyone has any questions for Junko, we can have some of those at the end of our program today. For our
Thank you.
next, yeah, thank you, Junko. For our next event is Modernism in My Neighborhood.
Hi, I'm Donna Robertson. I live in the Gold Coast at the corner of Astor and Goethe Streets. Amid rows of historic townhouses and leafy sidewalks stands one of Chicago's quiet modern icons, Astor Tower. Designed by Bertrand Goldberg in 1963, this slender, concrete and glass column feels both futuristic and neighborly, a modern counterpoint to the city's Gold Coast elegance. Goldberg envisioned it as more than a building. It was a vertical community. The tower's clean grid and rounded corners carry his hallmark blend of engineering innovation and human scale. Inside, the top of the tower restaurant crowned the building with panoramic views of Lake Michigan and the skyline. It became a social anchor for the neighborhood, open to residents and visitors alike, as a residential hotel initially. In 1965, the Beatles stayed here, adding a note of pop culture fame to its architectural story. What's remarkable about Astor Tower is how it bridges worlds, historic and modern, local and international. It proves that modernism, when designed with care and civic spirit, can both stand out and belong. For me, it's a reminder that architecture's best moments happen not in isolation, but in dialogue with the street, the city, and the people who inhabit it. In a neighborhood that celebrates the past, this building represents optimism about the future, a reminder that modern architecture isn't always about contrast, but conversation. It's a piece of the city's evolving story, standing here at the intersection of history and invention.
Modernism in my neighborhood. West Rogers Park and Peterson Park is one of the most ethnically diverse places in the city for both food and culture. Growing rapidly during World War II, Jewish families moved here from the west sides of town, and congregations and schools followed, commissioning buildings that interestingly reflect both modern ideals and enduring traditions. Along California, Toohey, and Devon Avenues, the story of modernism here is not about glass towers or monumental gestures, but about community architecture built to serve, teach, and gather. Multifunctional places such as the Mestiva of Chicago have layers that reveal decades of adaptation and repair, a sign of possible further transition. However, we can see structures that have more long-lasting prospects. At Toohey Avenue, the Yeshiva Shiras Yisrael at 2620 Toohey Avenue was originally the New Israel Congregational Synagogue, built in 1955. Over the years, it was changed through other congregations, such as the Hebrew Theological College, which now owns it as its Bilstein Institute. It keeps a modest mid-century vocabulary, formed like a monument and an urban marquee. Originally clad with stained glass, its infilled facade and pragmatic geometry mirror the neighborhood's quiet urbanity. A few blocks east, Yashivas Meor HaTorah, once Kilath Jacob Beth Samuel, and before that Beth Israel AG, carried its lineage in materials and urban features. Limestone panels, textured brick, terraces, stairs, and glass volumes mark a procession of neighborhood passage. And finally, at California and Pratt, the Bernard Horowitz Jewish Community Center, completed in 1961, remains one of the area's most intact and well-utilized modern buildings. It's both civic and inviting, an architecture of openness and belonging. Together, these buildings tell a story of continuity and reinvention. Modernism in West Rogers Park wasn't about spectacle, it was about everyday faith, education, and community, a modernism that endures through use.
Modernism in my neighborhood. So I'm standing out in front of Nutcher West High School, which was designed by Perkins and Will and built in 1962. And even though it's not in my neighborhood, it is a place that used to be my neighborhood. I grew up here in Northfield. And it was a hugely impactful place on me. It's a fantastic building. I think it's underappreciated. It's like a mini campus, a really incredible high school, and it's still in pretty good shape.
When I went to New Trier West over 50 years ago, I was introduced to photography and, in a way, architecture. Photography was very direct, and I loved the class, and I loved taking pictures, which has lasted my whole life. And architecture was a little more in the background, but nonetheless very influential because I loved taking pictures of buildings. And in serendipitously happening upon New Trier again a weekend ago, things clicked for me, and that's why I wanted to share New Trier West as an influential, beautiful modern place that I hope you all will go and see on your own.
Modernism in my neighborhood. Hi, I'm Marcy Dinius, and I'm a Docomomo Chicago board member, and I'd like to take you on a virtual walk from my former neighborhood of Kenwood on Chicago's Mid-South Side down to neighboring Hyde Park. We'll start at the corner of 48th and Woodlawn Avenue, where you'll notice on the northeast and northwest corners sets of modernist townhomes that stand in notable contrast to their neighboring Gothic and Tudor Revival mansions. The townhomes on the northeast corner were designed by Keck and Keck, and on the northwest, behind a 6-foot wall of buff brick laid in a pattern that you might recognize from Mies van der Rohe's Illinois Institute of Technology campus, you'll see the all-glass second floors of 8 townhomes peeking up over the somewhat imposing wall. These were designed by Mies's former draftsman Y.C. Wong and built in 1963. Come in through the front gate and you'll discover that the entire facade is glass. Wong called these his garden townhomes and designed them so that the garden would be at eye level from seating in the living room. His design was recognized in a 1963 feature in prestigious Arts and Architecture magazine. The previous owner of my former townhome in the row was an avid gardener, as I was delighted to discover come spring, when countless daffodils, tulips, lilies, and peonies sprouted up and created an absolutely stunning show. From here, we'll walk down Woodlawn, pausing to admire the Gidwitz House, finished in 1947 and designed by Ralph Rapson with John Vandermeulen. This is one of my favorite modernist houses on the planet, and I was stunned to learn recently that it was a remodel of a Victorian mansion like its neighbors. This handsome white stucco rectangular box, stacked and cantilevered over a smaller stone-faced rectangular box, takes my breath away every time I see it. And though there are plenty of other modernist buildings to appreciate along the way, we'll hurry to the former Lutheran School of Theology at the corner of 55th and University. I'm not sure I can quite explain why, but I'm powerfully moved by this set of 3 buildings, designed by Perkins and Will and completed in 1968. The long building facing 55th Street is massy and dark, with irregularly divided windows on its second and third floors. Yet this mass seems to float above its set-back, glass-walled first floor, supported by substantial yet graceful cruciform concrete pillars. I'm worried about the campus's future, though. The Lutheran school moved out, and the University of Chicago now owns the campus, and its future is uncertain. That it might face demolition is in keeping with the complicated history of these neighborhoods. All of the modernism in Kenwood and Hyde Park came as a result of so-called slum clearance. Many of the mansions had been converted into boarding houses that were poorly maintained by landlords. This is true of the sites that the Keck and Wong townhomes and the Lutheran school were built on. Still, those rundown old buildings were home to many people who had real communities there. Some were moved into modernist public housing that was no better maintained. Given, then, the high social cost of the buildings I've shared here, I hope we'll work hard to preserve them, both for their architectural significance and as implicit memorials to the people and communities they displaced.
Modernism in my neighborhood. After World War II, 12 million service members returned to civilian life. Armed with the GI Bill of Rights and a VA mortgage, most settled into the new suburbs that had been carved out of former farmland to begin what would become known as the baby boom. While past generations were instructed that children should be seen and not heard, or that to spare the rod was to spoil the child, post-war parents were more inclined to indulge their children. With the rise of consumerism, television advertising found an entirely new audience. Children who could cajole their parents into buying them things they saw advertised while watching their Saturday morning cartoons. This new ethos translated into the physical environment as well. In 1955, Walt Disney opened Disneyland in Anaheim, California, a veritable magic kingdom geared totally toward children. Closer to home, Chicagoland created some of its own memorable icons. One of those was the Par King Skill Golf Course, more commonly known as miniature golf. Opened in 1960 and located in Morton Grove at the corner of Dempster and Waukegan Road, Par King was advertised as the most elaborate 18-hole mini golf course in the nation. Each hole was unique and included such landmarks as the Liberty Bell, Mount Rushmore, and a giant shoe from the fairy tale The Old Woman in the Shoe. However, its most memorable hole was the scale model of the Prudential Building, the tallest building in Chicago at the time. Golfers had the opportunity to hit their ball into an actual Prudential elevator and watch it rise and then be unceremoniously dumped back onto the green. Today, unfortunately, a strip mall with a Starbucks occupies Park King's former site. Another mid-century landmark is Superdog. Dining at Superdog is like stepping back in time. Opened in 1948 at the intersection of Milwaukee, Nagle, and Devon, its founders, Maury and Florrie Berman, were ahead of their time and inadvertently created what would one day become known as kitsch architecture. The drive-in is distinguished by its two gigantic 12-foot-tall his and her hot dogs. In-car dining was reflective of the burgeoning car culture where one ordered their meal by speaking into a chromium steel microphone. Superdog remains in the same location today with virtually the same menu. Although largely indistinguishable today from its award-winning architecture, Old Orchard Shopping Mall in Skokie still retains its basic concept, despite its controversial 1994 remodeling. Completed in 1956, Old Orchard was one of the first regional malls in the country. Developed by Philip Klutznick and designed by Lobel, Schlossman, and Bennett, its numerous open-air rooms afforded plenty of opportunities to entertain the kids. Its outdoor areas included trees, fountains, bridges over stocked fish ponds, and generous flower beds. Rather than dread when told they were going shopping with Mom, kids were excited to accompany their parents to Old Orchard to play in these delightful, kid-friendly areas.
Please email us to put you on the list for the next segment. We are going to move to finances as part of our annual meeting. Board members Jeff Mercer and Sophia Mattasini currently handle our financials as treasurer and vice treasurer, respectively. For us volunteers, the details of these financials is burdensome, but the actual amount of assets that we run in this chapter are rather modest. And this slide on the left shows a comparison of bank balances from last year to this year, which has an increase or roughly same balance. And on the right, the components of what our budgets consist of for in 2025. When the board meets next month, we'll be proposing a budget for the next year. And again, if there's any questions about any of these expenses or our goals towards sponsorship, and if you want to be involved in the sponsorship, again, please let us know. And now for the spicy segment of our committee work, and that is for the advocacy committee. Our board has an advocacy committee that works together with other local partners to discover and share current and potential advocacy issues for our membership and work together to spread our concerns to the greater membership through our email newsletters, as well as communications. Our efforts have included in the past work on McCormick Blake Lakeside Center, the Thompson Center, and most recently the Baxter campus, which Elizabeth did a great presentation last year. To help us frame our current discussions and pursuits, I would like to introduce David Fleener, Advocacy Committee Chair, Board Vice Chair, and Incoming Chair for 2026.
Okay, there are a few projects I want to highlight today that we are following on the Advocacy Committee. The first project were the Scott Forsman headquarters. Scott Forsman was a textbook publishing company. Unfortunately, we lost that project and it has been or will be torn down for housing. The next project, which And let me just add that on the advocacy committee, we are assigning projects to different members to follow. So Max is following Bertrand Goldberg's Elgin Hospital for mentally disabled people. The building, I understand, is currently empty. And Max is keeping a close eye on that one. The next one is the Lutheran School of Theology, which Marcy so greatly talked about. We have a picture of that? No.
David, we can just go through each individually if you'd like.
Okay, there's a Scott Forsman. At the top left, you see the existing building, and at the bottom, you see the new housing development. And the next slide is Taft Hall, designed by Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, Walter Netsch, which you see on the left existing, and on the right, some renovations that are planned. Craig is following this project.
Yeah, I'll just say, obviously the window grill designing the original facade was something that was replicated throughout the UIC campus. So to start sort of individualizing all these buildings with new curtain walls seems like really not a good precedent to set, but unfortunately this one is underway at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, next is the Bertrand Goldberg designed Elgin Hospital, which Max is following very closely. It's empty, but Max, if you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, I guess just a little bit on the slide here, but the building, which is this structure and an accompanying laundry facility, have been abandoned since 2002. The surrounding Elgin Mental Health Hospital is still in operation, as far as I can tell. I've been tracking down some local historians and following up on some state leads as well, because the structure is owned by the state.
Okay, thank you. Interesting floor plan, as Max pointed out, at the scale it was drawn, it didn't quite fit on the sheet, but they went ahead and drew it at that scale anyway. Another project that Marcy introduced to us is the Lutheran School of Theology. Like she mentioned, the School of Theology abandoned the building in 2023 and moved to another location in Hyde Park. The building is currently empty. The school says they would like to do an adaptive reuse, but there are no definite plans ahead. That's a project I will be following, and hopefully with Marcy's input. Another project that I'm particularly close to because I was the architect for is the Ogden Plaza Park on downtown Chicago. It was part of the, I can't remember the name of it, the development along the Chicago River, where every private project was granted an additional FAR if they would contribute a public space. So the river walk around along the Chicago River was part of that. And this park was designed and was to be, and it allowed the Sheraton Hotel to expand their FAR. The deal was that whoever got that FAR was to maintain the park, which they have not done. There was a clock designed by the artist Vito Acconci, which has been dismantled. You see here graffiti that's been put on the walls of the park, and the neighbors are afraid to use the park because it's not a safe place to go. So the point being that we will also be adding parks and art to our advocacy, not just buildings. In the next slide, you can see here is a Solowitz sculpture on the east side of the Federal Plaza in downtown Chicago, which has fallen into disrepair and has been removed. Karsha will be following, keeping an eye on that to see what the progress is.
Yeah, as of last month, so the sculpture went missing on April 7th this year, and there's an article by Lee Bay that came out in May where he stated that they reached out to GSA and haven't heard back, so there's no news, it just is missing. And then there was another follow-up article last month, no, actually September, where he mentioned that he heard back from GSA and they said that because it was in bad condition for restoration, they took it down and it's now at Mackay Lodge Conservation Lab, which has done other preservation work for other sculptures. I think they did for Alexander Calder also, if I'm not wrong. And but the problem is the sculpture is uh, so Solow was one of those artists who kept copyright of his sculptures. So right now the copyright is with the Solowit Foundation, which is headed by the wife of Solowit. She hasn't heard back, and nobody from GSA took permission to take the sculpture out. So there's something fishy going on there. Um, and that's the update.
And Ukarshik, talk about the Dubuffet sculpture, please.
Yes. So this one was dismantled last year, and the plan was to install it in Art Institute of Chicago, which is a long-term plan. There's no specific date, and we don't know where it is stored right now. I think Elizabeth might know more about this one. I did reach out to Art Institute just asking about the update and when they're planning to reinstall it. Is it a permanent reinstallation in Art Institute and where exactly will it be? I haven't heard back yet.
Okay, and in summary for the public art, Chicago has always been very proud of its public art collection, but we have seen it lose several important pieces, starting with the Chris's sculpture at 33 West Monroe. We lost the Henry Moore in 3 First National Bank. We lost the Calder in the former Sears Tower. We've lost the Bertoya at the Aon Center. So we are adding public art to our advocacy endeavors. And we invite anybody who's concerned to join the advocacy committee.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, everyone on the committee, for reporting on these issues. At this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we're at the point of the meeting where we can have questions versus from any of our members of anything you have seen or heard. Starting with the advocacy and working backwards. Any questions on anything or any statements of concern or things that anyone would like to bring up? Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Actually, Craig, I have a question, and I meant to ask the executive director of the national committee last week when I saw her in Chicago. Is there any word on what the 2026 theme will be for Docomomo US?
Interesting you say it. I heard a rumor that it might be in line with what Jonathan presented as his Modernism in My Neighborhood, which is sort of places of entertainment and fun.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And that's just something I heard at our last Modernism America Awards last week. So we'll see if that's what they decide. I don't think it was an official thing, but there was a board meeting the day before. So it seems like that might be where they're going.
Good to know. Thank you.
Great question. Well, thank you everyone for being here. I think we can I can move to adjourn the annual meeting.
Before I make that motion, let me thank you for an excellent presentation.
Thank
the
you.
record of the events that we had, the Modernism in My Home, the advocacy, all excellent presentation. Thank you very much for coordinating that.
Well, thank you to Junko for waking up
And Junko too.
bright and early and talking to us from Japan. That's definitely a treat that I was glad we were able to execute today. And thank you to everyone who is part of this presentation. So with that, keep these ideas, places, and concerns in your forethought for a short time, and then enjoy the rest of your evening and report back to us. We'd like to continue the conversation outside the annual meeting.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So moved.
We are adjourned.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you, Craig.